Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, HeartMath practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of the podcast. My guest today is Dr. Toni Winchester, and we're going to be talking about the relationship between sleep and mental health. Before we jump in, let me share a bit of background info on Tonia. So Dr. Tonia has been in practice as a naturopathic doctor since 2007. And now as a mind-body healing coach, she uses contemporary neurological reprogramming techniques to help people break through insomnia, burnout, stress, anxiety, and fatigue to find joy and energy again so they can create exceptional lives for themselves, their families, and their communities. She guides her clients through a breakthrough process where they easily and gently clear the painful imprint of the past and recode their unconscious minds so that they are primed to make and sustain positive changes in how they take care of themselves. The results are a strengthened connection to self, more self-love, worth, and value, ultimately allowing them to build happy, meaningful relationships and compelling futures. Dr. Tonia is the author of Breakthrough the Insomnia Cycle, How to Sleep Deeply, Wake Rested, and Enjoy Happy, Energized Days, which we're going to be talking a little bit more about. And when she's not transforming lives, she's getting lost and found in the forest, salsa dancing, and turning paper into pretty things. Hello, Tonia. How are you?
I'm great. Wow, that all sounds awesome. Sign me up for all of that, please.
Isn't it wonderful when somebody else reads your bio out and we have a reflection back of our own brilliance? It's great. I want to ask you before we jump in, your paper into pretty things, is that origami?
Yes, that was my paper craft of choice for a long time. And then I started getting into, I would fold primarily cranes and flowers. I actually started making these origami bonsai bouquets that I learned from this one particular person online. And they're just these stunning, really minimalistic, but gorgeous little pieces of 3D art. And then over COVID, I started doing more just 2D stuff, watercolor painting primarily, lots of abstract stuff with
amazing
work on top. Yeah. It's very calming to my nervous system, I find, to just sit and focus on something, making something beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it's quite funny that you talk about it because somehow at the beginning of this year, I latched onto the idea of making 1,000 paper cranes in a year. I think I got to about 28 paper cranes before I gave up. But
you should totally complete that project. I've done it twice, actually.
I'm just thinking about it now and thinking, we're recording this at the end of August. I've got 4 months to make 1,000 paper cranes. I'm just going to have to give up my day job and fold paper. But I have to say, I found the folding and the crafting, because I'm not crafty at all, really soothing once I knew how to do it. And I think it's there's a great book called Rest, and it escapes me who it's by, and the guy talks about the power of active rest. So things like origami, gardening, things that keep our hands busy and just allow our subconscious to come to the fore, because the conscious brain is quite busy doing something that's relatively easy. From a mental health standpoint, origami is great, folks.
Yes, and active rest completely helps us with passive rest, which is sleep. I love talking about active rest. But back to the cranes, twice I've folded 1,000, and I had, one of the projects was for my sister's wedding. She wanted to have strings of cranes decorating the hall that she was in. She had a team of people working on 1,000 with her. So she had 5 people doing 1,000. And then I myself contributed 1,000. And I had it all worked out. Like I was like, okay, 30 days to the wedding. That means I've got to spend this many minutes per day doing these folding. And I'd worked it out that each crane took like 1 minute and 19 seconds. Like I had it all mathematically averaged out. So I could be like, okay, I need to put in my 42 minutes today of crane folding.
But I think it's the equivalent of a meditation. I'm sure it's as good for your brain doing something like that, where you're concentrating solely on one thing, nothing else is. And I think it's wonderful. If we jump into our topic today, I am aware, and I think a lot of people are aware, of the importance of a good night's sleep and the impact of a bad night's sleep. So interestingly, we are here recording several days later than we'd scheduled to, because I was unwell and had a bad night's sleep. From a naturopathic point of view, what are the 3 key ways that sleep affects mental health?
Yeah, there's so much going on when we sleep, and each stage of sleep offers us something different in terms of how we recharge. When we're awake and alert talking, we're in our beta brainwave state. And then as we're slipping into sleep, we're in that alpha state. That's quite an imaginary sort of, it feels very dreamlike. It's almost very trippy, that place in between waking and sleeping. Mm-hmm. And then into theta, where we can do really deep mental emotional healing. But then even deeper than that is the stage 4, the delta sleep. And when we're able to access that deep state, everything renews in the body. Physically, we renew. Emotionally, we renew. What's happening is memories from the day get consolidated, ideally integrated if there was something that was a struggle. Ideally, our nervous system can say, okay, what's the learning out of this? Do I need to keep this? Do I need to hold on to this, or can I release this? And then also at a mental level, where we process memories and how we lock down things into our long-term memory. So it's all happening in that sort of deep state of sleep. And if we are disturbed in our nervous system and our hormonal system, and we're not actually able to get into that deep sleep, we're going to miss out on those 3 crucial things that we need to heal and restore every night, so that we can wake up feeling rested, alert, energized, excited, patient, kind, compassionate, right?
Yeah. And I started, in preparation for our podcast, I started rereading Arianna Huffington's Sleep Revolution book. And and I know there's something in there about the impact of sleep on Alzheimer's. Am I correct with that? And probably with dementia, I think, as well, because when we're sleeping, effectively the toxins start to clear out of our brain as well.
Yes, you're referring to either the glymphatic or the G lymphatic system. People call it different things, but it is exactly that. It's a channel, a fluid channel inside our brain that detoxes our brain tissue as we sleep. And it's only going to happen again if we get into that deep sleep. So there's a lymphatic system in our body, which is cleansing our other cells, our other body cells, but the G lymphatic system is what cleanses the brain. And we need this. One of the things I say all the time about, if we could simplify health into one formula, health equals nutrients in and wastes out. And of course, that's possibly overly simplified, but I think it's nice to bring a really complex thing like health and being down to something so straightforward. Yeah. And that's exactly what we need to think about. Biochemically, we need to think about that. So how can we nourish our bodies? Or I like to use the word nutrify our bodies. How can we detoxify our bodies? And we need to detoxify our minds. We need to detoxify ourselves emotionally, energetically. And so the G lymphatic is how we process biochemically our brains, our minds at nighttime.
Yeah. And I think I've also read her book, Thrive. And I think, I can't remember which book it is. She starts with the story of realizing she'd not been getting enough sleep when she woke up face down on her office floor in a pool of blood because she'd literally passed out and hit her head. Yeah.
Such an image. It stuck with me too. Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me in that book as well that she talks about that there's a lot of people driving cars who haven't had enough sleep and are effectively, it's the same impact as being a drunk driver. Yeah.
100%. It's so terrifying. Yeah. Not only are we needing to sleep so that we can heal our own bodies and our own minds, but we need to be able to, be alert and cognizant and have quick reaction times in our day-to-day stuff. When we're driving, we're putting people at risk if we are sleep deprived. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I can remember a friend of mine, when she had her second son, I don't think he was a very good sleeper. And I can remember her saying to me once that she drove to work, got there, and then thought, I don't actually remember any of that drive to work whatsoever. This is not a good idea. I need to do something about this. And luckily for her, it was a wake-up call that she had a realization. She didn't have an accident or a near miss or anything. But I think it's a bit of a worry to me, really, that there's lots of people driving around that aren't taking care of themselves. But I think to that point, and it comes to the next thing I want to ask you, is I think people don't always know how to get a good night's sleep. So from your point of view, can you share what are the most common reasons for people not being able to get to sleep? And then if they get to sleep, not being able to stay asleep?
Yeah, for sure. So stress is the biggest one. And it is simple by whatever the stress is. Okay. And stress, if we're being really technical, is actually not the thing that is stressing us out. That's called a stressor. Stress is actually the physiological response in the body. So whatever the stressor is, if it's an emotional stressor, a relationship stressor, work stressor, kids, parent, like all of the things in life, we know what they are, right? Traffic in some people's cases, all of those things have the same physiological impact on our body, which is stress. And stress has a certain very predictable set of physiological changes, heart rate increases, breathing rate changes, blood glucose, blood sugar changes in terms of where it's being delivered, how it's being metabolized, how it's being produced, stored, etc. The main driver here is this hormone we've all heard of called cortisol. And cortisol is like this bully hormone in the body. It overrides everything. So it changes how our thyroid functions. It depletes our thyroid function. So our metabolism goes down. It changes our reproductive hormones. We don't have the same access to estrogens and progesterones. Progesterone is a natural sleep aid. The body, though, when it's stressed, does something really smart in a way, because stress means that we need to survive something, and the body will always choose survival over feeling good. And that's something we have to kind of consciously override all the time. But so when the body's stressed, it's going to take progesterone and it's going to shunt it down this biochemical pathway and make cortisol. So we deplete progesterone, we increase cortisol. Cortisol is this bully. It won't allow, if cortisol is elevated, it won't allow melatonin, which is our natural getting to sleep hormone, to increase. It won't allow GABA, which is one of our stay asleep hormones, to increase. And so we have this really, I'm going to use the word perverted state of cortisol being elevated often at the wrong point in the day, which is at nighttime. So that's one of the first things, is just we have this exposure to this hormone that not only is a stimulant, but it also depletes the things that calm us down and get us to be able to rest. Next, I would say something that is largely overlooked because it's a socially acceptable drug is alcohol. And alcohol, when we drink it, it actually impedes our ability to go into both REM and that stage 4 deep sleep. REM is where we dream. And it's thought that the dreams are involved in sort of memory consolidation, like I was mentioning a bit before. So there's this drug that we're using to help calm our nervous system down. It's this physiological roller coaster of, okay, I'm stressed. I need something to bring me down so I can sleep. But then ironically, it's actually not allowing us to get the sleep that we really need. And then the third one, which might seem obvious, but people just turn the other cheek at it, is coffee. Coffee is basically like injecting cortisol right into your bloodstream, and it has the exact same physiological effects as cortisol. And it's interesting because people think, oh, I can handle my coffee, I can handle my coffee. And if I ever have a patient who is anxious or not sleeping, I want so badly to suggest maybe try no coffee for a couple weeks and see how you do. However, I've learned over the years that is not an okay thing for people to hear. They do not want to hear that. They'd way rather I'd be like, take out sugar, wheat, dairy, take out every food except chickpeas, but keep the coffee in. People will not return. I've learned this over the years. So I only condone it when they ask me about it. What do you think about coffee? What do you think about coffee? Do you think it's having an impact on you? Yeah, I do. Okay, maybe let's talk about how we can wean that down for you or whatever it is. My husband, who's 6'4", 230 pounds, I don't know what that is in kilos, sorry. You'd think, oh, he's like a giant guy, like he can handle his coffee. He's a terrible coffee detoxifier. So if he has one coffee at 8 a.m, he'll be up all night.
Wow.
Several hours later. And so there is a genetic component to this, how we detoxify coffee. Some bodies just don't do a good job of it. And for sure, if there's listeners who are hearing me say this and you do have struggles in your life, things like anxiety and insomnia, consider removing the coffee because it is just a stimulant, a driver, a nervous system agitator.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not these days a big coffee drinker. I'll have maybe 1 or 2 cups in the morning after my 2 cups of hot water with lemons. We get the system cleansed before we jam the caffeine in. But then after that, I'm good. And then I might have a cup of tea, 2 o'clock-ish. That's it. I know for me, if I have any caffeine post 2 o'clock, it affects my sleep. And I think it's interesting. I think we live in a world where people are addicted to that pep of caffeine because they're not sleeping properly. And yes, it's this kind of perpetual cycle of trying to stay awake and then can't go to sleep. And the one thing I've found that has made a really big difference to my sleep, and I talked about this in my very first episode, is meditating in the morning. It's been quite profound for me, the benefit of 20 minutes of meditation in the morning to my sleep that night. And I've started to notice, because I've had a week, we're going away on Saturday. So this week's been a little bit frantic and the meditation has fallen off the table a little bit. And I notice in myself, I'm starting to feel a bit overwhelmed before I normally would. And it's amazing how something like meditation can be so powerful to sleep. And I've worked my way up to 20 minutes of meditating, I think, for anybody listening. And it's something I talk about quite often on my Instagram and in my podcasts as well, is it's difficult to hit 20 minutes of meditation off the bat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't try that. You'll fail. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So exactly. And you set yourself up to fail because it's hard to sit still for 20 minutes if you have a busy brain, and especially if you've had a cup of coffee. And it's okay to work up to it. You wouldn't decide tomorrow you're going to go and run a marathon if you've not done any training, because you're not going to manage it. Somebody's going to do that and prove us all wrong, but
yeah, good for them. I hope that happens. Absolutely. And the thing is, I'll say to people, let's set something that's really doable, really manageable, and I'll call them an offensively small goal. Let's set a timer for 1 minute and just have you deep breathe for that 1 minute. 1 minute, I can do more than that. Maybe you can, but you may not do that 2 days in a row. 1 minute, you're likely going to be able to find 1 minute that you can do several days in a row. And then we'll increase it to 2 minutes for several days in a row and build up. There is strategy to building a habit, and that's one of the key ones. Circling back to tea and caffeine, one of the things that is not as well known about tea as it is as coffee, but tea also has a different molecule in it. In addition to caffeine, it has something called L-theanine, which is a nervous system calming molecule. So we don't have the same sort of caffeine impact as we do with coffee, because there's this sort of more neutral effect. So you do get some brain alertness from it, but you don't necessarily get the agitation from it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you share that, because there's always, obviously I'm British, and there's always a cup of tea solves everything. And there's some science behind why the cup of tea solves everything. So we've talked about cutting back on caffeine as a way to help sleep. We've talked about how meditating can help you sleep. So are there any other ways or anything in particular you favor to help people be able to get to sleep naturally? Because I think the one thing that tends to be the problem in the society we're in is that it's very easy to medicate sleep.
Yes.
And I don't think, correct me where I'm wrong, you're the expert, we don't get into the proper deep sleep with sleeping tablets.
Yeah. Yeah. So same sort of impedance that the alcohol creates. Yeah. Yeah, so there is one of the things I love what you mentioned about meditation. That's so crucial because it allows us the opportunity to gain a bit of will over our nervous system and choose a different response to stress. It gives us space to choose a different reaction when things might automatically stress us or trigger us. Practices like meditation give us this buffer where we can pause and just take a breath and be like, how do I actually want to, what is the most helpful way to respond in this moment? Having full spectrum light first thing in the morning is actually really helpful. That's going to trigger the proper circadian rhythm. And in terms of how melatonin is produced, it actually does well when we have that bright light in the morning. And then conversely, dark bedroom, no light in the bedroom, no phone in the bedroom. And I usually will tell patients to turn their phone off 2 hours, like no screen time 2 hours before bed. If you can't be in a dark room, eye mask. If you're sensitive to noise, earplugs. My husband's a snorer. I spent $200 on custom formed earplugs, and it's the best $200 I've ever spent. To the point where like chaos is happening and he's like running around getting, this is a weird random story that I can't explain if you'd like, but he's like getting baby bunnies out of the house, and I'm just like totally not aware of any of this. We sleep with our bedroom door open, and we live in the forest, so there's creatures sometimes. Anyways.
I love that. How brilliant that the baby bunnies are the cause of a problem in the middle of the night. That's wonderful.
Not for me. Yeah.
Not for you, not a problem for you. You weren't disturbed at all.
Yeah. Another one is people wake up in the night to pee, and then their brain turns on and they can't stop thinking, and so they can't get back to sleep. So eliminating drinking liquids 2 hours before bed is usually the cutoff I like to suggest. So there's strategies in terms of sleep hygiene that we can employ. But ultimately, the big one is how can we get stress out of our bodies so that we get out of what I call the insomnia cycle, which is day-to-day stress, which in some people can ramp up to anxiety, which then is going to create this agitation in the nervous system, which doesn't allow us to fall asleep and or stay asleep. So we have a restless sleep, often just awake for many hours in the night. We wake up fatigued, we wake up irritable, our stress tolerance goes down. We don't have the internal resources anymore to be calm and patient and kind. So then the stress level increases and the cycle continues. Yeah. So ultimately, people can enter this cycle from any point, but I think ultimately we need to get the stress out of our bodies. And one of the things I actually do with my clients is I use these really specific neurological reprogramming techniques. It sounds very fancy, but it's actually a very easy, enjoyable experience where they no longer have those same old triggers, especially things that are really old and from the past. So as much as we can put in behaviors that will help us for sure regulate our sleep cycle, if the root cause is still there, then we're going to have to keep, I'm going to quote unquote medicate, even if we're using natural things and behaviors to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's just so interesting, your point of talking about getting stress out of our bodies. And I think we also have to start getting stress out of our lives, because
yes.
it's something that I'm so passionate about, having experienced burnout. Yes. I don't ever want to feel like that ever again. It was horrendous. And I think being in that, so for me, it was just, I just hit a wall and hit the floor and sat there crying. And I'm somebody who's usually got my stuff together and I'm usually pretty level, and it just awful. And it was just, I was just trying to do too much. And I think it was my body's way of going, hello, I'm going to pull a handbrake up here for 100%. You, because you need to stop this shit, because it is not, you can't continue like this. But I think some people have a wake-up call. Some people have a wake-up call of a partner walking out because they're fed up of their reactivity. And I think this is the thing you're talking about with this kind of stress feeds into stress. When we don't sleep properly, we can't be calm, patient, and kind. We're reactive with people. They're reactive back with us. We're constantly on the kind of offensive. I think then it slips from being in a flight response to a fight response all the time. And life is horrible. And I don't think it needs to be like that at all. And it's something, I'm a HeartMath coach, so some of the HeartMath tools are very physiological tools. Yeah. But that process of just calming, slowing your breathing, calming yourself down is just transformative to being able to make a better decision. And when we feel better, we do better in life. We have better relationships and everything else. I could keep going on and on about that. So I am quite curious, Tonia, as to why this is important to you and how you found yourself specifically working with sleep stuff. I know you've got your ebook about breaking the insomnia cycle. So I'd love to know a little bit more about how you ended up here.
Yes, because I was there. I was that person who was just lying awake at 2 a.m, staring at the ceiling, listening to my husband snore away this was before my earplugs, and just with the brain going tick, tick, ding, 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 tick, tick, about nothing, about what I need to buy at the grocery store. Like, these are not things that I need to be thinking about at 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. This was going on for months and months. And there was a few things that kind of led to that time in my life. And one of the things in my naturopathic practice, I was finding myself very dissatisfied because all I want to do is help people get better in their lives so that they can live better lives. And people would come back to me after meeting, like we'd sit and we'd have a first visit and we'd go through their health history and talk about their goals and talk about how we were going to get to those goals. Here's the bridge. I'm going to offer you the bridge to get over to where you want to go. And they'd come back to me and they'd be like, eating my broccoli is so hard. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And inside, I'm just questioning, and outside, I'm like, yeah, I know. And then inside, I'm like, but what? You're not lifting anything heavy. You're not going to be sweating. Like you just chew like you normally would any other food. Like what's hard about this?
Yeah.
And the problem was, what I came to realize is whatever the thing was that they knew would help them feel better in their lives, whatever the behavior was, broccoli, water, sleep, hygiene, setting boundaries in relationships, getting the toxins out, whatever it is. The actual acts of doing those things, not hard.
No.
The decision to do those things, really hard for people.
Yeah.
And I came to find myself really obsessed with that moment in human psychology where we choose to take care of ourselves and choose to do it again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. So this was leading to some of my stress that was creating part of my insomnia. That was part of it. Thankfully, what I ended up discovering helped my own sleep and now has gone on to help many others and their sleep patterns. And it really all came down to this piece that we're neurologically wired for everything that we have, every behavior that we're doing. And if we don't make changes to our neurology, like how our brain is actually connected to our bodies in certain ways, we're going to just stay in the same patterns. So we break through those old ways that our brain has been wired. So maybe if we had a lot of really scary stuff happen when we were young, and now our body says it's in survival mode because I just have to stay safe and vigilant and alert, you're not going to be sleeping. You're not going to be able to get into that deep sleep, because if we go back ancestrally and evolutionarily, if you were a monkey in a tree and you went into a deep sleep, you would fall out of that tree and you wouldn't be safe anymore, as an example. We have these patterns, and when we break through these neurological patterns that exist, we can actually then change our behaviors, and not just our conscious ones, but the ones that are automatically happening on autopilot. We're going to find ourselves more easily able to get to sleep, stay asleep, wake rested, find the joy, find the energy, find the peace that we're looking for in our day-to-day. And so the tools that I found helped me, and also, like I say, have helped so many others to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think we forget the impact of our thought patterns, however, and like you say, they're often really old and they often really don't serve us anymore, but it's an ingrained neural pathway. And but coming back to the lady with the broccoli, it's probably a miracle you didn't smack her with some broccoli, although broccoli is not the most appealing thing to eat lots of. It's good metaphorical broccoli, but it's like you say, it does take some effort to shift your thinking, and it does take a bit of work. And I think sometimes I have found with my own life and also with my coaching clients, with shifting behaviors it's hard, because often we go into unknown territory of, well, but what's going to change if I have the broccoli? But maybe you have a bunch of friends who really aren't into healthy eating, and you might think, what do? I don't want to go out for dinner with these people anymore. And so it goes on. So I think there's all of these. I think that's what's so fascinating about the human mind and our way of being, is that there's so many other things that underpin the choice to not want to eat broccoli.
100%. Absolutely. You're so right. There's so many factors that play into any decision in any given moment. What is interesting is we can stoically suss that all out ahead of time. And often when I'm working with someone to create a goal and something that they're wanting to work on, I'm going to challenge them, like, what are you going to lose when you get this goal? And
I love that. Sorry to talk over you. I absolutely love that. What are you going to lose when you reach this goal? Because
they need to think about that. They have to anticipate that. And can they be okay with that? Can they grieve that loss? Is it a loss that they're willing to write off and it's totally fine? Like you say, are there social groups that they're going to change their interactions with? There's so many factors that we need to plan ahead for them.
I just that is my biggest takeaway from our conversation, of that reframe, because we're always so conscious with goals, aren't we, of what are we going to get, what am I going to have, how am I going to feel, and focus on the fear. This is all the things that we get taught. Focus on the feeling, then the goal will come. But we don't talk about, because this is, I think, often why people don't achieve goals, is because there's this incongruence of, I want to achieve the goal, but there's a part of me that's afraid of what I'm going to lose achieving the goal. Yeah. And if you don't tackle the piece that's holding you back, you never actually, it's why we self-sabotage. And I think often 100%. We don't understand why we self-sabotage. So I absolutely love that. I've been reading a book about EFT tapping, and they talk about something similar, and I think they referred to as tail enders. So we want this, but I'm not really sure I want it because X, Y, and Z is going to happen. So
exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. That is fantastic. I love that. And I think that's just something to really think about when you're moving forwards with stuff. Phenomenal.
Like another example that people wouldn't really consider, if I'm working with someone to release weight, and I very consciously use that word release versus lose, because I don't like losing my keys. And really, anytime I lose something, I want to find it again. So we're here to release weight in this instance. One of the things that came up recently with a client was, she said, I'm going to have to get rid of all these clothes that I really like. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, you could get them altered. And she's, oh, cool. Because she had some really great pieces that she really had a lot of affection for. Yeah. I don't want to have to just trash all these clothes. Yeah, that's something to consider. How do we plan for it?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's absolutely brilliant. I would like to know just a little bit about what is in your ebook, what people can expect to get from your ebook, and where they can find that. We'll obviously put the links in the show notes as well, but if you could share a bit about what people stand to gain from listening to your ebook.
Yes, what they gain and what they can lose from.
Absolutely.
So the book is called Breakthrough the Insomnia Cycle: How to Sleep Deeply, Wake Rested, and Enjoy Happy, Energized Days. And it is this marriage of naturopathic medicine, so 17 years now in clinical practice, and all the wisdom that I've gained from my patients over the years. They're my true teachers for sure. And then also this new work that I haven't actually named in our conversation, but it's called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And it's how we do this brain rewiring so that the unconscious mind is on board for the changes that you want to make consciously. So it's this storytelling narrative of how these two things came together for me, and what they can offer people is the way through the cycle that we've been talking about today, how to break through that in a way that doesn't require talk therapy, doesn't require medications. Not that there's anything wrong with medications, just not the preference that I choose to use with the people that I work with, and how we can actually start to reprogram our minds for the things that we want. So deep sleeps, waking rested, the joy and the energy. There's a companion guide that comes with it that has some self-reflective questions. There's also some added audio. Actually, the ebook comes with an audio version, because I know the people that most likely need the book are the ones that are really busy and don't have time to sit and read a book maybe, but they might have some time in their car driving their kids to soccer practice or football practice so that they can listen in. And ultimately, the goal of the book is to just help people find a way back to their selves. I think most of the people that I work with over the years now, so many people just feel so disconnected from who they are and who they want to be. And whether that's the stress, the sleep, the anxiety, they just feel so torn from what they remember themselves to be, even when they were young, like as really joyful, happy kids or whatever. Something gets lost over the years. And so I feel like the book is a way to find our way home to ourselves.
I love that. I love that piece about finding your way back to yourself, because I think in my coaching practice as well, I think it's people generally come to us as coaches because they have lost their connection with self, and they don't feel on purpose. And I just think that's so important. Anybody listening who would like to get hold of your book, where would they find that, Tonia?
Yes, ToniaWinchester.com. So Tonia Winchester.com. And that's where you can find all the info about the book and the audiobook. And it's also, you can get a paperback version too. It is on Amazon as well. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I will share the links in the show notes with everybody as well. And I just want to say thank you very much, Tonia, for talking with me today. It's been really insightful, and I've really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. Me too. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.